Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Coaching for Millennials. I am your host, José Miguel Longo, and I'm really excited to come back for another week, which is always a win in my book, but also to present you with something that has been, I think, not just top of mind for me personally, but I think conversations a lot of people are probably having internally in their brain and not out loud. And if you're having it out loud, I hope it's with a friend, a therapist, a family member, someone you trust that can help you process things. Because with the world being so heavy in today's society, and I think the world has just gotten heavier and heavier, millennials have felt an enormous pressure of what does really life look like and how do you build a quality of life that seems not just fulfilling, but one that feels full. So today's episode is why your life feels full, but not fulfilling. And some of the inspiration from today's episode, which coincidentally, I had been planning on having this conversation slash topic already, but in the process of scrolling through my Instagram feed, I came across a TikToker whose video was shared on Instagram. And then I found the TikToker on Instagram because I was then like, can I find this person? This person goes by the name of, and bear with me, I should have written this down. Where is your name, lady? Kristen Sheltz, KristenShelt. She's a founder of a company called Earthwell, Etherwell. You can find her on Instagram at Etherwell 2025 Earthwell, or on TikTok at Kristen, Kristen 1942. She had mentioned the moment she said millennials' perception of time is not linear was, wait, what? I need to hear what this woman's talking about. Now, before I jump into any of that, let's talk a little bit about framing this episode so that you have an understanding of where we're going with this and why, and we'll build our points from there. So here's something to consider and, for the topic of our conversation. If you've ever thought this, my life is full, but I don't feel fulfilled, this episode's for you. So because a lot of millennials have built lives that look good on paper, you have the job, you have responsibilities, you have a routine, you have things going on. Your calendar seems full, but internally something feels off. Not broken, just missing, right? I mean, who can relate to this? Anybody? There's always something that I feel like something is missing. I don't know what it is. I can't really quite put my finger on it. And, for someone who is a life and career coach and I practice emotional intelligence and I have all these different experiences and learnings, and there's always sometimes something that's missing, right? And for many of us, the confusing part is that you can't quite put your finger on the thing that's actually wrong, right? So instead of addressing it, we just keep going through life, act as if something isn't wrong. We pretend that it's not there. We sweep things under the rug. So today, we're going to be unpacking that. We're going to peel back the layers of the onion. We're going to pull up the rug, sweep everything out, collect our little pieces, and figure shit out. Now, before I jump in, I want to dive into my segment of what I'm liking, what I'm listening to, and what to look out for. So what am I liking? I am excited to watch the season finale of Drag Race UK versus the World. Now, this aired, when you're watching this, the finale aired the previous week. I'm watching it a couple of days later. So bear in mind that when you're watching this, I will already have learned that who won the finale. But Drag Race has become a really important part of my life for so many reasons. RuPaul is someone who I've admired and looked up to since I was a kid. I remember being in 6th or 7th grade, and I was part of the video yearbook. Yes, I'm a big dork at my junior high school. And one of the segments we were clipping was You Better Work, Cover Girl, into a reel of different things that happened in that year. And that song was very catchy and poppy, and it was on the radio, and it was a great song. And I'm such a lover of dance music and anything that makes me move, not just being Dominican and Latino, Hispanic, however you want to identify, but I love to dance and I love music. And if it has a good beat, I'm going to bop to it. But watching RuPaul on TV and then watching the video and watching that always made me feel emotional. I never understood why. I never understood, what it did. It just made me feel happy, but in an emotional way where it made me also sad because there was something that I saw in that man that had so much confidence. And at the time as a kid, I didn't know what this was. It's just was me now as an older grown ass man figuring my shit out, recognize where that came from. And I get like right now, I feel like I'm holding it back because what he has done for the LGBTQ community to me is transformational and giving people in the queer community a voice to share their stories and allowing those voices to be heard by other people who perhaps don't have one. So I know I really took this on a very different tangent, but I'm just excited that I get to go watch that this weekend, today, maybe. And then, to watch season 18, RuPaul anyway, we're down to the last 6 queens. And this season seems like, I don't know about y'all, but, this is also falling into like, what am I listening to or what am I watching? Because it's part of what I'm liking. This season of RuPaul, the regular RuPaul edition, seems like such an amazing cast. They genuinely like each other and like have grown to a really strong sisterhood. And the foundations of that has just been an amazing season. I hope that they get nominated for Emmys this year for season 18. The production has just been chef's kiss, like so on point. So I'm really excited for all of that. Now, let's move into what to look out for. So if you remember last week, I had mentioned that I have a couple of things growing and brewing, right? And I also had mentioned that I made a shift from wanting to plan episodes where I was doing 2 episodes a week. And now we pivoted back to our weekly episodes. And I think this structure makes a lot of sense regardless. I feel that in watching the number of downloads and watching the number of viewers, I saw a trend where it went down over the course of the last 3 weeks, perhaps, when I started to do 2 episodes a week. And I don't think I was giving people enough time to process, listen, watch, view, consume the content, and I was putting it out too quickly. In retrospect, I think it kind of made sense to do the Unstuck and Focus series where it was doubled up, and that actually ended up being the 2 weeks in which I did do 2 episodes a week. So that kind of made sense, but hindsight is that I've learned that no, that's not the great recipe for it. And in wanting to grow just the YouTube channel and the audience, because that's one of the one of the goals I have for my coaching practice is to grow on YouTube. And I used to think that podcasting back in the day was just the audio piece, but the video piece really resonates with me. Obviously, I'm doing this on camera and I want to have guests come on to season 6. And for what to look out for is that if you're listening to the podcast and if you're someone who wants to book a guest to be on the show, please be patient with me. I'm going to be sending emails out to everyone who's reached out to me in the last month with a link to my podcast Be a Guest on the Show form. The form has been completely revamped. It's been revamped with very much so intentional information that I'm requiring every single person who wants to be on the show for that to feel like your expertise or niche or whatever it is that you're looking to talk about on the show fits into me, my audience, and what the show is about. I appreciate the love. I've gotten a lot of people reaching out. Literally, my inbox is flooded by people who want to be on the show. I'm also going to put in an auto reply on my inbox for the next month. So, meaning end of March, beginning of April, and all through April until my website is fully built and developed for the purpose of people who are reaching out and wanting to connect to be on the show. The link will be on that autoresponder. It is the only way that I'm going to be able to manage what's coming up in my life to be able to support wrapping up my course, finishing these guides and these tools and resources that I'm working on, and to dun dun dun, dun I'm starting a new job. And the job is a full-time gig. It's not a contracted or consulting gig like I have been doing with my business. This is a full-time W-2 job. And I will talk more about that in the next week because our next week's episode is focused on career. But I wanted to just share all the things to look out for. And looking out for that is also kind of laying out the foundation of how the show, Coaching for Millennials, how the podcast, all the things is going to really, live. So here's a sneak peek of the framework that I've been building behind the scenes. So if you're someone who is a millennial, right? And even if you're not a millennial, please don't feel like because I'm being more intentional in what I'm sharing that this isn't for you. I want the Gen Zs. I want the Gen Ys. I mean, Gen Xers, not Gen Ys. Millennials are Gen Ys. I want the Gen Xers to show up here. This is for anyone. But I am a millennial and I so feel like my generation has been just fucked and we're trying to figure it out and I want to figure it out together. And that's why I'm now paying attention to what's out on platforms and social media to help other people find those messages through me, but also in me sharing what I've been doing for the last 6 years. So if you're someone who is in a mindset that you're exploring your identity. And what does that mean when I say exploring your identity? This means like you're trying to figure your life out. You're trying to figure your shit out. That's part of your identity. If you're someone who's looking for clarity, right? A lot of what things we talk about here is emotional intelligence, mindset development, mindset coaching, clarity, building, and focus. And if you're someone who's looking for strategy, this is the career stuff. This is the stuff where I talk about the shit that no one wants to talk about when shit gets ugly in your career and how to do it right and how to help you get through it. This is the direction we're going in. And I'm being very intentional, being very mindful, very demure, but also very focused because there needs to be a structure that it really helps me grow and grow the show and all the things I have going in my business. The initial intention of this podcast was to help me build an audience that would get me clients to build a business. That was the goal of this podcast. This podcast in the last 6 years, mind you, in April, we'll be celebrating the 6th year, has taken me into so many beautiful directions and rewarded me with great opportunities. Some of them were financial rewards where I've gotten contracts and gigs, public speaking, moderating panels, and hosting events and coaching and all the things. And some of them I've done for a very nominal, almost free to give back to the community and things of that sort. So it has been very fruitful, but I want more of that. I'm saying this out loud because it's important. And I think it's important to share that. And I think it's important for me to let myself say what I'm feeling and thinking when I sometimes don't, but also expressing it in a way where my audience should know I'm here to be vulnerable with you. I'm here on this journey with you. And my journey is to build a coaching practice that really is focused in supporting millennials while also building out tools, content, and resources that are going to help them be the better version of themselves and the version they're looking to become. That's really at the root of it all. So let's pivot out of this, this segment and really move into what we're talking about here for this episode, why your life feels full and not fulfilling. So let's jump into our main point of focus here. And the thing that I want to call out here is that if you're someone who is a millennial and you're between the ages of, let's say, 30 to 45, you've built a life that's full, but not an intentional one. Now, I'm pausing there because you're like, wait, what the fuck is he saying? Let's start here. A lot of millennials didn't intentionally design their lives. They followed a sequence: school, job, stability, responsibility. Now, here's where the connection to what Kristen 1942 from TikTok was mentioning. She says linear time rewards stability. We were told to follow the steps. Go to school, get a job, get married, buy a house, have kids. I've left out a few of those, not on purpose, but I'm not copying her. Her message is relevant to what my message is. But I think it's important to like listen to it. I loved what she said and I'm giving her credit. Getting back to what I'm saying here is that along the way, things just got added on to that. Now, in the space of where I live and focus on, that means more work, more commitment, more expectations. So your life became full around how you were lifing and how your career was also lifing as well. The two blended very much so together, but oftentimes we don't know how to separate them. Now, until one day, your life just feels full, but you didn't consciously choose all of these things. Some of these things you really said yes to, but not realizing what you were saying yes to in the first place. So, someone who says yes to everything, which I've learned my lesson, I'm learning. I'm going to be 43 this year. I am not saying yes to nothing that's not serving me, honey. Let's get focused here on why I'm saying this. You said yes to extra projects, yes to social obligations, yes to family responsibilities. That means you're just constantly busy. If anybody who's listening to this show knows me, I hate telling people I'm busy. I'm so busy. It is a word that drives me crazy. I feel like it's overused, but there's no other way to really talk about how we're doing except being short and saying I'm so busy. Now, the thing that we've never asked ourselves is this actually aligning with what I want? Have you asked yourself that question? Because the thing here that I want to really call out is that we have to start being intentional. If we're not intentionally focusing on the things that are creating this fullness in our lives and understanding why we've allowed them to be, while also being mindful to how we're not going to allow them to continue to be, then we're not going to change this feeling of just being full but not fulfilled. Do you know what I'm saying? I want that to kind of like sit and, be reflective. So here's a reflection for you. Where in my life I'm maintaining something just because it's already in motion. I'm going to say it again. Where in my life am I maintaining something just because it's already in motion? My nose is itchy. That's something that I think really sets a framework for what we can do to start to change that behavior. So let's go a little deeper here because this isn't just about time, it's about identity. Now, here's the second point I want to go into to go further into this. You've outgrown the version of success that you once wanted. Remember how I said if you're somewhere in the ages of your 30 to 45, here's where this starts to come into play. What fulfilled you at 25 not fulfill you at 35. That's normal. You're not that same person. But a lot of millennials don't update their definitions of success. Have you? I'm surely looking at that at 43. And I'm still 42, but for sure. So we just keep chasing the same goals, but that no longer feel meaningful. Now, here's an example. You worked hard to get the job, you got the title, you got the salary, and then you realize, I don't actually enjoy this. But instead of adjusting, you push through because you think, I should be grateful. How many times have you done that to yourself? I know I surely have. It was the thing that caused me to say to my boss in my last job saying, if things don't change, I'm going to leave. I have to leave. It was a conversation where I felt like this isn't being meaningful to me as much as I want to have an impact. Now, even though this episode is really focused on life and identity, you can't have an identity without a career, and you can't have a life unless you have something to fall on to help you create the life that you're wanting to build. Let's not forget those two things go in tandem. So let's reframe the structure of I should be grateful, because that's a very important piece of your identity that you need to call out and be mindful of. And in the reframing of it, gratitude and misalignment can exist at the same time. So, yes, you can be grateful and still want something different. That's the core here. Yes, you can still be grateful and still want something different. Now, in the reflection context of this point, what version of success am I still chasing that no longer fits who I am? I say it again. I'm going to pause this time. What version of success am I still chasing that no longer fits into who I am? This is where the real shift starts to happen. And here's our third and final point for today's episode. Fulfillment is not built by default. It is designed. And this to me was like a aha moment, because a lot of how I translated the podcast over the last 3 years, I would say, was in building something that's reflective of life design. How do you build the life? How do you design the life that you want and deserve? And the same thing with your career. So when I was framing this and writing this, it really was reflective and saying, yes, this is an aha moment, but it should be an aha moment for you too. So fulfillment is not built by default. It is designed. Fulfillment is not automatic. It requires intention. And most people don't pause long enough to design their life. They just manage it. Right? How many people have done that? I'm guilty of this just as much as the next person. I'm not here to act like this hasn't happened to me. I'm teaching from my examples. That's where this comes from. My mistakes are not the ones that I want you to create. Let's be honest here. But here's a real good example of what this looks like. So, someone who shifts from working nonstop to creating space, saying yes to setting boundaries, chasing more to choosing better. This is where fulfillment starts to come back. Being intentional, being mindful, and being aware. I'm going to say this again. Working nonstop to creating space, saying yes to setting boundaries, chasing more to choosing better. I love that so much. I literally got goosebumps just saying that. So here's the teaching lesson to take away, and we'll then do our reflection to wrap up here. Fulfillment comes from alignment, energy, intention. Well, alignment, energy, intentional choices. It's not just productivity. And I am so guilty of this because I sometimes feel as though I have to stay busy to feel not just fulfilled, but like I'm doing something. And maybe part of it is my ADHD, but I also recognize that I say yes to a lot of things that don't necessarily fulfill me and for the sake of wanting to help others. And I have to be more intentional about how I'm saying yes to, because my time is precious. And I've never stopped in the last 4 or 5 years to really think about that. I've had to make a lot of choices recently, or not choices, but decisions that have led me to think more about how I want to intentionally spend my time so that I can still feel fulfilled in the work that I'm intending to do. And that's hard because there's projects that I love doing that I'm going to have to say no to unless something changes that's going to lead me to say, this is worth my time and my investment. And that's hard as well because you want to align yourself with creating intentional choices and the energy, right? Something that I do a lot when I talk about strengths-based coaching, and that's for a whole different conversation, is the first question I ask people is, when are you at your best? When do you find that you're doing something that gives you energy? Like, I'm sitting here right now and I'm pumped because doing this with you brings me energy. It brings me joy. I get excited. I get, the emotions in my body. So you have to ask yourself these questions. And that's why I've built my podcast where it's asking you question and reflection, right? Intentional and being proactive. So in this mindset, I know I went a little tangent there, but in this mindset and this framework, fulfillment comes from alignment, energy, and intentional choices. It's not just about productivity. So here's your reflection. If I could redesign one part of my life right now, what would you change? Get your journal, get your notebook, pull up the notes app on your phone, pause this if you need to and come back, write it down. And there's more. Trust me, I have a call to action here for all of you. But this reflection is really important because this is where you start to remember how I said peeling back the layers of the onion? This is where you start to do it. If I could redesign one part of my life right now, what would I change? So let's wrap this up and put a pretty bow on it. If this episode resonated with you, I don't want you to just think about it. I want you to take action. So tonight or sometime this week, write this down. What in my life feels heavy? What in my life gives me energy? What am I doing out of obligation versus intention? This little exercise alone can start shifting so many things in your life and ultimately help you build alignment, focus, and intention. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, my life looks fine, but it doesn't feel right anymore, that's not something to ignore and just sit there and ponder and say, well, this is all good. That's something to explore because that's actually a signal that your body is sending to your brain that you've grown, but your life hasn't caught up to you yet. Now you're saying, like, what the fuck is he saying? What this means is that you need to wake the fuck up because you are doing things that aren't serving you. And you have to shift to then reevaluate. You have to realign and you have to redesign. Having that in mind, this is what I do with millennials. I help them reevaluate, realign, and redesign the life that they were actually meant to be living so that it feels fulfilling. So if this episode hit home today, send it to someone because a lot of people probably feel this way. And don't just say this aloud. I want you to feel like this is part of something you're going to do and take action. Your life can be full and it still needs adjusting. And you're allowed to make changes. So don't be scared. All it takes is one small step. The one thing I always say is, how do you eat an elephant? And it sounds weird to say that. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, having said all this, I hope that this episode brings you a little bit of an eye-opening, a little bit of joy, a little bit of wisdom, but a lot of love. Until next week, I'll see you on the channels, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. Love y'all. Take care. Bye.